What's going on? This is TJ Murphy, and welcome to another episode of Adventurous Entrepreneurs. My guest today is Amanda Reill. Amanda is an author, speaker, and coach who embodies a passion for creating, connecting, and helping others find their true north. Known for her prolific writing style, Amanda's life brings nuances to paper in a way that resonates with many, giving them a sense of belonging and purpose. Featured in the Harvard Business Review, she's currently penning a book on work-life integration that promises to inspire. Beyond writing, Amanda offers transformative life coaching, where each session helps subsidize coaching sessions for single moms through Habitat for Humanity. As a dynamic public speaker and workplace culture consultant, she's revolutionizing how early-stage startups perceive work. With her program, companies not only learn more about their employees, but also cultivate a space where employees are happier, more connected, and dedicated. Just a few of the golden takeaways Amanda shares in this episode are the significance of having an intentional writing practice, overcoming the challenges of imposter syndrome and work-life integration, and the importance of showing up bravely to seize opportunities. So, without further ado, this is me and Amanda Reill. Welcome to the Adventurous Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, TJ Murphy. Since quitting my corporate 9-to-5 and starting a business while backpacking through Asia back in early 2017, I've had the privilege of learning from some incredibly adventurous entrepreneurs. Through these conversations and my own journey, I've learned that much like in life, entrepreneurship is an adventure. On this podcast, I explore the journeys of top-performing leaders in their fields. These wide-ranging conversations include tactical business advice, how I built this insights, lessons in leadership, life hacks, travel stories, favorite hobbies, and insights into living a purposeful and joy-filled life. Adventures await us, so let's dive in. Hey, Amanda, welcome to Adventurous Entrepreneurs.
Thanks, TJ. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, I've been excited for this one all day. So I'd love to start with just a bit of background on you and your journey. I know it hasn't always been smooth sailing and you've had to overcome some tremendous adversity to get to where you're at today. So walk us through your story.
Yeah. So I went to Bible college as a young 20-something and got involved in church leadership for about 15 years. And that was kind of the focus of my career at that time, in a hope to really just be useful to people and to love people. And that is something that I've never strayed away from, but that was sort of where my career went. And I was doing all kinds of jobs in the background, trying to support that life that I was living. We were living in community with a bunch of other people, my husband and I, and just caring for folks, helping out with people financially, just doing whatever we could do to sort of live like a village. So that was like 15 years of our lives. We were living in Portland at the time. And as I was going through a career transition, as I mentioned, I was working a lot of administrative jobs, project engineering jobs for construction firms. I went through a little bit of a lull. And as I was transitioning, I wondered, this writing thing that I had always sort of come back to time and time again. Yeah, this passion that I had. I wondered for just a second while I was looking for a new job, if that's something that I could do. And I decided to try freelance writing for a minute. And within 6 months, I had landed 30 different clients. I really fell in love with not just the writing, but also the hustle of it all. I fell in love with the idea of joining people in their projects, and quickly grew my projects to a point where I couldn't even manage them all. So I started hiring people to do administrative work for me and do the pieces that maybe I wasn't as talented at, or I wasn't as efficient at. And even outsourced a bit of the writing during that time, so that I could keep growing. And that ended up being a really, really great move for me, and a really fun and comfortable place for me to be, not only just doing my passion of the written word, and diving into the ghostwriting world, but also just my passion for people. And the way
Mhm.
that I found quickly that I could have a conversation with someone and then take that passion, that excitement that I had in the interview process and translate it then into the written word, and to create a piece of writing that represented you, your ideas, and also your voice, to the point where you would go, oh my gosh, it feels like I wrote it. Like that would be the greatest point of success for me. So yeah, that was how I transitioned into the world of ghostwriting. So as I was building my client base, I got connected with a company who exclusively does ghostwriting for executives for top tier publications like Newsweek, Forbes, Rolling Stone, Fast Company, Entrepreneur, places like that.
Wow.
And they hired me to just do a couple of these articles for some of their clients. And then after we did a few, it we just all discovered that this was a really great fit for me. And so they were actually looking for somebody to come and join their writing team. And at the time, I had really been enjoying my entrepreneurial life. Like I had really been enjoying being my own boss, having flexible work schedule, um, all of that. And I think really realizing for the first time what the things were that I needed in order to be really, really productive and efficient. Because the typical 9 to 5 didn't always work super well for me that way. And so I was a little bit hesitant to take the role, but knowing the opportunities that I might have and the things that I might be able to learn from being a part of this organization, and being able to talk with them, negotiate, like, how can I still run my business? How can I still be an entrepreneur, but also like fill this role for you? Was a really important conversation that we had early on, because it was very important to me not to lose that, because that had been this wonderful point of freedom and being myselfness that was really necessary for me. So I was very, very excited to get to negotiate that, for that engagement for the next couple of years. And I spent a couple of years developing my role there, and was able to, along the way, get published in Entrepreneur Magazine and Harvard Business Review. I have 3 articles published there, and I'm working on some more. And I think it was really great to be a part of that organization to help me move along on the road that I was already on. And so that engagement was really, really valuable for what it was, for the time that it was. And I'm really, really excited actually now to be returning back to um, this era of self-employment and of creating my own business, after having learned a lot of great skills there, and hopefully served that organization really well as well. And now back
Yeah,
to writing, back to
and now back
coaching.
to writing and to helping people and really empowering them.
Yeah.
And I love how you mentioned, I don't think I've ever heard it coined that way, being myselfness, or myselfness. Like, it's so critical. And the fact that you were in a entrepreneurial world, you were your own boss, you were building something, and you were empowering other people by being able to take the writing, which isn't a skill set that many people have, off their shoulders, but still making it sound authentic and genuine and real. That's a tremendous gift. And the ability for you to take on this role where you're going to have amazing opportunity, you're going to gain some connections, some leverage, the opportunity to get published in big name, media. What a tremendous opportunity, but you don't want to sacrifice the thing that was giving you that myselfness. So
Right.
kudos to you to be able
Absolutely.
to advocate for yourself and figure out a way to step into that role while still maintaining the things that you loved and that you were passionate about. So I think that's a good segue into where things are at today with your business. Who are you serving? How are you helping them? And what's got your focus right now here in July of 2023?
Yeah. So another one of my clients, prior to me taking on my full-time role, was for a a coach training company. And so I was blogging for them, and I didn't know much about coaching, life coaching, executive coaching before that point, but was able to get really deep into that world. And so that all happened, and I was doing that concurrently with my full-time role. And really opened my eyes to the world of coaching. I didn't know much about it before, and there was a lot of really, really powerful tools that I was discovering that were really, really helpful to people as I was just writing about the concepts for this company's blog.
Yeah.
And so in the process, decided to get certified as a coach and go through their training program. And in so doing, it connects a lot to the pastoral ministry that I used to do for so many years, similar back to helping people, back to jumping into just the corners of people's lives. I mean, that's something that's very important to me as a coach. And coaching is my primary, the primary direction that I'm heading right now, is to work one-on-one with individuals and also with groups and corporate groups. In my experience, working and talking with a lot of different corporate executives over the last few years, especially, and realizing how much people don't take the time to stop and think about where their North Star is and whether the path that they're on is actually heading toward that North Star. It doesn't take a lot of time. So right now, I am focusing on 3 different pieces. I'm focusing on the coaching, I'm focusing on my writing, and I'm focusing on a public speaking career as well, to be able to help people in this conversation, to be able to, I call it like the inhale and the exhale. Like I'm constantly reading and taking in information and taking in wisdom from a lot of different sources, and to be able to exhale that back out in coaching meetings and in my writing and in my speaking.
Love that. And I know something that we've talked about before is imposter syndrome. And I know that's a huge thing. Imposter syndrome is such a common phenomena. We all experience it at one time or another, but for many, it can be really crippling. I mean, it can hold people back from achieving their dreams. And to me, it is one of the biggest challenges that I want to help people overcome. And I know you're a huge advocate for conquering it as well. So if you're up for it, I'd love to open up a conversation. And for starters, would you be up for just sharing like how imposter syndrome has affected you personally and in your professional life?
Yeah. That was actually the topic of my first Harvard Business Review article. So it's a very, very close to my heart topic, and also something that I continue to encounter. And I think a lot of us continue to encounter every day as entrepreneurs. When I was starting my business from scratch, I didn't have any sort of resume to show like I'm a professional writer and I can handle your writing project well. And so that was a challenge, because that's what you're used to when you're like applying for jobs. That's your sense of legitimacy, right? Is this education maybe that you have, certifications, trainings, experience, any of these things. What I had was a talent, I hope. And so I had to figure out a way to like communicate that talent. But part of that is actually leaning into the idea that you might have a talent. And that's kind of a scary thing, because you can have people around you that love you, sort of cheering you on and saying, oh, you're an amazing writer, and I would love, for you to help me, write this cover letter, or this or that. Like those are all really wonderful things to be able to go and come to a potential client and say, you should pay me a lot of money for the skill that I have. It takes that's like the ultimate imposter syndrome, right? Like
It's
so
courage.
it was really, really tricky. And so what I tried to explore in that was, the story I always go back to is like I'd be on the phone with potential clients handling projects that I'd really never taken on before. And they would ask me a question like, well, how do you normally handle this type of thing? And I knew in my mind that I had never handled that particular question. And there were some people on the phone that would very easily, I knew I could just say that and we could have a laugh together and I'd still get the project, and we had a great rapport. But there were other people that were a little bit more serious, and who I knew had very high expectations for the project, and were maybe evaluating a lot of different candidates for the project. And so what I ended up leaning into was not a deception of, oh, well, let me tell you how I've handled these things that I haven't really handled, but was deciding in that moment, this is how I handle that.
Yeah.
And so that was a big turning point for me, because I knew that I could say that with confidence. This is how I handled that particular question that you have about how to do this project. And I knew that if it didn't work, like, I'd figure it out. I could adjust my process later, but that I had to start somewhere. And so that was a really, really big piece for me. And I think the other big piece that I have to remind myself every day, ideally every morning I'm writing. I'm doing like Julia Cameron's morning pages, 3 pages of just straight writing. And every day I'm facing the question, like imposter syndrome asks you the question, like, why would anybody want to listen to you? Why would anybody want to hear what you have to say? But turning imposter syndrome on its head is like, what if they're waiting for you to say something? Like, what if they're hoping for you to say something? What if you say something and they thank you for showing up? They're so glad that you said something. And trying to take a look at our like life and work from that perspective really changes it, where you don't feel like you're like sort of knocking on the door and like asking for permission to come in. You're expecting that people actually want other people to show up authentically. People actually want to hear who you are, what you care about, what your passions are, and they want to be encouraged by your story and your journey, no matter what it is, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. So I think that that's a conversation that I have with myself a lot as I'm sort of facing the imposter syndrome beast.
Yeah, I love just the ability you had to be honest in certain situations. I think that's the hardest thing that especially people that are just getting started with something are going to encounter is, oh, I don't know everything. Like, how can I show up in this meeting and be confident and make the sale or provide the value, whatever it is. But the reality is that person is engaging with you for a reason. Like you already made the date happen. So there's a level of legitimacy to whatever you're doing just by the fact that you're having that meeting, if that's the situation we're talking about. And it's totally okay to be somebody that can be honest and say, you know what? I don't have the answer to that question, but I'm going to find out what it is and get back to you so we can talk about a plan of action around it. And most people, I would say, the people that you're going to want to work with anyway are going to respect you 10 times more for saying that than just making something up. And then on the other side, there are plenty of opportunities where you can just make it up, as long as you're not lying. If you're just winging it on the fly and you do it in a confident way and you follow through on the things that you promise, that's totally okay too. You got to fake it till you make it in some cases. So I love the approach there. And I think that's honestly what's been the biggest thing that I've learned over time to combat imposter syndrome, is just reminding myself, no, like you know that they want what you have, like they're reaching out to you for a reason, or you got invited on this podcast for a reason, or to speak at this group for a reason. Like you've got no reason to be feeling like you're an imposter. Just show up and be you and be real and be honest at the end of the day, because you're not going to have all the answers. So what are some other strategies or things that you've found effective for managing that feeling of imposter syndrome or just like self degradation? Is that the right word? Yeah. Putting yourself down in those situations.
Yeah, I think the writing is huge. And I think something that's really important for people to understand too is that this concept of writing daily does not have anything to do with like being a writer or not being a writer or being a good writer or whatever. The discipline of sitting down every day, and Julie Cameron will tell you in her book The Artist's Way that it has to be like the first thing that you do, pour your coffee, right? Like it's on your nightstand, get your notebook out and do your thing. I'm a little bit more flexible.
It's okay.
But I think that the process, sitting down, like for me, especially if I recognize that one of those feelings or one of those thoughts has entered into my space, like, I just don't know, like, I don't really, maybe I shouldn't do this. Like, I don't know, I'm just saying the same thing that everybody else is saying, those are the kind of messages that often come in. Then I sit down and I start writing, and there is no agenda for the writing other than to call out what thoughts are coming into my head and also articulate like what I know to be true. And I found that it's just very, very hard to lie to yourself when you're writing. Like when we have these thoughts going whirling around in our heads, and I don't know, I imagine a lot of battle takes place like sort of in the back of our of our head. Like these thoughts like come in, we sort of battle with them, and then they go out. We don't really deal with them. And this is another reason why I think coaching is so important, because that's when you sit down and actually say, we're going to deal with this. We're going to find an answer to this. We're not going to sit in the back of our head and wonder, like, I don't know. I mean, I could do that, but I could not do that. And I'm not really good at it. We sort of like work on things a little bit for like 30 seconds at a time. And then our imposter syndrome or inner critic often win and we move on. But I think that if we can begin to recognize those moments when those invasive thoughts or feelings are coming in, that writing is a really great way. Also, it engages both your left and your right brain. Yeah. And so it's not like just emotional anymore. You have to bring in that logical side of yourself, and you have to actually face it. You have to write down, like, is this really what I believe about myself? Is this really what I believe about what I can accomplish? And you have to face yourself in a brand new way. And so I think the morning pages are really helpful, but even more than that, I found when I feel just any sort of like that anxiety in my body, that I get out my notebook and and it's like you have coffee with your inner critic, right? Because like these voices inside you, often they come from a protective place that's trying to help you from embarrassing yourself or from getting yourself into danger, right? And so that's where I feel like we have to befriend them sometimes. Often we just make it one more thing to just be frustrated about, like, why am I just always so negative, or why am I always struggling with this, or I'm never going to get anything done, and it just becomes this cyclical thing. But when we befriend that and sit down and go, oh, what are you trying to tell me? Okay, well, thank you. Like, I appreciate that. Like, I understand how you're trying to look out for me in this way, but this is the actual truth about the situation. And not make yourself the enemy again. Like, you're not the enemy of yourself if you're trying to really pursue a life that you can be proud of and that's aligned with your values. And when you start to write things down, I think you start to really realize where some of these messages are coming from and whether or not they really hold up to the test of truth.
Yeah, I love that. And I think with what you just said, there's lots of the pieces in there already, but let's pretend for a second that I'm a client of yours, and just full transparency. I used to write a lot more, and I don't anymore. I used to keep a journal. I used to do morning pages, and I've fallen out of that practice. Like, what advice would you give to me in terms of cultivating the habit of a writing practice? And is there a framework that would be useful for me to follow? And I don't know, talk to me. Talk to me like I'm a client.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I think is so important is testing and trying things and then tweaking them.
Yeah.
I've just created a new acronym just right there: testing, trying, tweaking. So I think what's important is like I said, Julia Cameron has a very specific way that she says morning pages need to be done. And I think she has a lot of wisdom. So like starting from that point of reference is a good place to start. But I think what you need to do is take on that challenge for a week, for 2 weeks. And if you find yourself at the end of that week or 2 weeks, and that's again where a coach is really helpful, because you have that sort of accountability piece of coming back and saying, I didn't do it. It's not a failure.
Why didn't you do it? What stopped you from doing it?
Exactly. And it's not, and there's a lot of different reasons, but a lot of times the reason is just like, that was not a good time. Like that just does not work. I, for one, so this is why I advocate for actually trying Julia Cameron. Like, I am not a morning person at all. And my creative time is actually from like 2 to 6 p.m., which is, I think, weird. Feels like nap time for most people.
I'm the opposite.
Yeah, I do not have anything going on in the morning, but I was really surprised when I tried to really, do it to the T, how much I was, even this morning, I've been kind of off of it for a bit, but this morning I was like excited to get out of bed and start like getting into that. And so that was something that really surprised me. That's why I advocate for trying that method first. Because there's a lot of reasons for it in terms of being able to, like, the very first thing that you do, clear out everything that you sort of brought into your day and set the tone for the rest of your day. But I don't know that that always works. I think it could be really, really challenging. You know, sometimes you have small children and you plan to write at 7:30 and they usually get up at 8, but then they got up at 7:15 today and now you feel like the whole day is shot or whatever it is. I think you have to figure out what works for you. So the advice that I would give you would be to try Julia Cameron's method, and then in a week or 2 weeks reassess and say, is this working for me? And if not, why?
Yeah.
And is there another time of day that I can try? Maybe you're a, like, right before you go to bed writer. Maybe you're a lunch break writer, you know?
Totally. Yeah. When I was just starting my business, I did have a morning writing practice where, I was just kind of getting the thoughts out of my head, really identifying what the 1, 2, maybe 3, but no more important things were for the day. I forget, there's probably some other things in there too that I would journal about. But then at the end of the day, I would have like a gratitude practice and jot down the things that I was grateful for in that day. And I mean, that was a period where I saw just tremendous innovation and growth in my personal development. And that ultimately led to business growth as well. And I had a lot of things going on, but I definitely think the writing for me was just crucial to everything that I had going on in that moment. And I don't think I've thought about it until this moment. So it might be time to get back into writing, because this new season that I'm in will require some introspection. And
it's really powerful as far as decision making goes.
Yeah.
And acknowledging the emotions that go into decision making. And I think particularly for entrepreneurs and leaders, really being accountable to yourself about what is actually going into the decisions that you're making. I just don't think it can be done unless you make it concrete in front of you.
Yeah, for sure. Putting pen to paper is a powerful practice, and just getting the ideas out of your head, A, so you don't forget them, but B, because in the moment when you're having ideas, at least for me, like I have ideas all the time when I'm doing something and I can't act on them right then and there. So I need to get that out of my head and onto paper or in something.
Yes.
So that I can move on from it and not just be distracted and not present in whatever I'm doing or with the people that I'm currently surrounded with. And especially in business, there's always something that you can be doing and something that you're going to be thinking about, and ideas are always popping up. So having a journal somewhere deliberate where you can get that stuff out of your head and then refocus on the task or activity at hand, that's something that's been really powerful for me.
And the next step, have you read Building a Second Brain?
No.
The book.
That sounds cool. I could use a second one.
Yeah, no. So that's like that. It's really interesting, but it was so helpful for me because I'm not a naturally organized person at all. But taking all, like, I'm there with you, like with the notebook, writing stuff that I just was like, we're driving in the car the other day and I'm just like writing all these social media ideas and things like that. But in Building a Second Brain, he talks about how to build an organization system using something like Notion or Evernote to store all of that. And that is like critical for me because I have 50 million different scraps of paper everywhere. But if I know sort of where it needs to go and needs to live, I know I'm not going to lose it because I think I've lost the idea.
Oh, I've certainly have. I'm guilty of just using notes on my computer, my iPhone, and that's a good like elementary starting point. But as you get more and more complex and have more and more stuff in there, it's a black hole, and you'll put stuff in there and never find it again. So using Notion, using Evernote, using a system where you can categorize and organize things so that you'll actually find them and be able to utilize them later is very, very important. So another good reminder for me, not doing everything well in that regard. So always room for improvement
too. Like I was just writing about that earlier today, like how systems, like the idea of like, well, you should really have a system. That just feels like It just feels like
Yeah.
authority. It feels like
Yeah.
homework, like no thanks. But for somebody like me with ADHD, like systems are actually really freeing. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't, it's not, it's built to like serve you so that you can go, oh, good, that's off, that's away. Like I put that where it's supposed to go and I don't have to think about it anymore. It's
Totally.
not like one more thing to feel bad that you're not doing, sort of a
Yeah.
thing.
Systems, when done right, are all about freedom. And that's
Totally.
a buzzword in my brand and everything that I do,
Mm,
because that's the pursuit. That's what
right.
I'm in business for. That's what I'm helping my clients do. And I find more and
Right.
more that's really the core of what most people are out there in pursuit of these days. And in business, I've
Right.
come to realize more and more over the years that I really feel a sense of responsibility toward my mission to break the norm of small business owners just being shackled to their businesses, and
Mm,
empowering them by creating freedom when it comes to the marketing and growth of their business. That's
mm-hmm.
the lane that we work in Height Digital. But in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, I didn't have that sense of responsibility. When I was just getting started, I was just providing a service. I was providing value, and that was kind of it. But now I feel more emotionally responsible for the outcomes that we create. And it's a real
Mm,
motivator that I use to empower and inspire my team to, help me in that endeavor. I'm curious, like, what do you think about entrepreneurs feeling that sense of responsibility toward their endeavor, whatever it might be? And what does that mean to you and your business?
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it ties back to that imposter syndrome conversation about like what if the world's waiting for you to do
Yeah.
this thing that's inside of you that you feel like you need to do, that you don't have to ask permission to show up fully, but that's actually a need. And I think that taps into a part of us that is exciting. I
Mm.
don't think that responsibility should feel too heavy. And maybe that's the other side of it too, is this idea of creating healthy boundaries, because I want to help every single person in the entire world. And so I have to learn how to stay true to my mission as well, and not just have it be like too broad in terms of just like helping people with anything all the time, every second that anyone asks or that I identify they have a need.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna like sign myself up. I
Yeah.
love to do that. And so I think part of having a clear responsibility to your mission is sticking to that as well, and continuing to revisit it periodically to make sure that you are still really aligned with the direction that you previously identified that you wanted to go, and that all of the different components of your life or your business are headed that direction and are not distractions. um,
Mm.
and the blanket of all of that, again, not this conversation of like, gosh, now I'm going to be so frustrated with myself that I allowed myself to be distracted in this way or whatever. Like that's just a part of it. Like that will just happen. We will see shiny things. We will relapse into our need to help people, our savior complexes or whatever it is that we struggle with,
Oh
and we
yeah.
will get back up. And we
That
will
one's real
figure
for
out.
me for sure. Try to help
Yeah.
everybody, but at the end of the day, I cannot. So
Right, like finite time, finite resources, and it's really really hard. But I think understanding and seeing how much better you serve the people that you can really serve the best when you're not trying to chase people down and be like, I can help you, I can help you,
yeah,
has been a really important thing for me to reflect on.
yeah, gotta help the people that want to be helped. So,
Right.
what do you have any like frameworks or systems that you follow to achieve your goals, but also just to like know that you're in alignment with that commitment, that why, that purpose that you've set out to really embody in your business?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I hate to be a broken record, but it does come back to the
That
writing.
writing. No, I mean that gives us like perspective on all of the applications that a writing practice can have. So please continue.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally fair. Totally fair. Yeah. So I think coming back to the writing is that is where you begin to recognize different things that can come in and distract you. Like for instance, I was trying to figure out sort of who my target audience was. long ago. And I was writing about that and realizing that it was very important to me to not target a female specific audience, even though I felt like that might be a natural place for me to be to help women with imposter syndrome, with work-life balance, all of that sort of thing. But I realized that I had felt like I had something to prove, I think, in wanting to be able to be universally appealing or universally being able to help anybody in any stage of life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so as I dove into that topic in my writing, and again, that might sound like, oh, I'm like preparing some sort of a treatise. No, this is literally like writing that you can burn. And I have to tell clients this a lot because some people even have past trauma about people reading their writing when they
Yeah.
were younger,
Reading
or
their
maybe
journal
even
or
not.
yeah.
Yeah. So I like that kind of surprised me because I don't think that's ever happened to me. Not that I know, not that I know.
Yeah. You may not know, but
And I can imagine how violating that would feel. And so I've actually talked with a couple clients who struggle to write about things honestly. And I think this is the topic that, I might feel comfortable sharing here, but not everybody might feel comfortable sharing publicly, but they might write about it. Like, why do I have this thing that I'm, working through in terms of needing to sort of appeal to everyone? Like working through this. And yeah, I think just remembering that some people need to burn the pages like right after you write them.
yeah.
Like you will have good ideas that should be translated over into your second brain that you've built, your Notion or your Evernote or whatever, or you might have a journal that like you don't have to burn them. But some people, even when they know, these people literally live alone. Like they live alone and they still fear that like somebody might someday read this. I mean, I don't know, maybe they worry that they're going to get hit by a bus this afternoon and somebody's going to come clean out their house and know, and that's real. And I think that's fine. But to get rid of it, like throw it away, tear it
Yeah.
up, do whatever you need to do to be absolutely honest in that time that you're spending with yourself to work through these things. Because when you sit down, it's like, okay, we're going to solve this problem. It's not like I'm going to write an essay. It's not I'm going to
Yeah.
create this beautiful piece of writing. It's I'm going to solve this problem. And so I think exploring some of those things on the page is really important. I don't know if I really answered your
No,
question.
I
I can't
think,
remember what
yeah,
your
you
question
did.
was.
I don't even, oh no, it was about goals and stuff, but I love the intentionality there. Like I've done just that, like having some deep work and putting it onto paper and with the intention in the very beginning of like, yeah, I'm going to go through this and it's gonna be hard, but then I'm going to burn it. And that was just like a freeing practice in and of itself. It's kind of a,
Yep.
ritualizing it to some degree, like, yep, this just served a purpose and now to ash it
Yep.
goes.
Yeah. And you walk away with like a real tangible product. I think it feels weird to think like I'm going to do a bunch of work and then I'm going to burn it. It's like, no, like you
The
burned
work
the
is in
piece
the
of paper.
practice. Yeah. The words
Yeah,
on the
exactly.
paper, they're only as powerful as what you got out of actually putting them there, and reading
Right.
them again, maybe in some cases would serve you down the road, but it's the
Yeah.
present act of doing it that really has the tremendous power behind it. So
Right. Yeah. I often talk about coaching as like untangling knots, and so it's like you might have burned the pages, but like you had that knot that was in the back of your head somewhere and you got it untangled. Like that's it's tangible to walk away with that kind of clarity and
totally.
freedom.
Totally. Well, all right, Amanda. This is a podcast about entrepreneurship, but one of the biggest hurdles that we all face at one time or another is living a well-rounded life and doing the things that bring us joy with the people that we care about most. And I always
Mm-hmm.
like to understand what that looks like for everybody I have on the podcast. So what does living a well-rounded life look like for you? I mean, especially when you were in a full-time job, but you had your own clients, you're a mom, you've got kiddos at home, you've got a husband, you've got a
Mm-hmm.
lot to wrangle in. How do you balance it out?
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of my huge passions as well is work-life integration. I'm not a fan of the term work-life balance because I feel like that hits life and work like
Yeah,
as
it's
these opposites.
got to be in
And
balance to be good. No, that's not the
yeah, and then it's another just invitation for shame too of like something that you're just not doing well again.
yeah.
My life isn't balanced enough or whatever it is in one direction or not. But And this is actually just little promo for my own work, but I'm working on a book about work-life integration. I'm really, really excited about it. So this is a really huge passion of mine.
Awesome.
And I think, yeah, I'm pretty excited. I think that it all comes down to the process of decision making and triaging the most important needs. So even when I had a full-time role, it was interesting because it was headquartered on the East Coast and I live in Oregon. And so I'm 3 hours behind. And so there was a lot of like asynchronous work that needed to take place. And what I would often do, and what I still do today, is take each day and examine what the priorities are. So, like right now, for me, like I'm not getting a regular paycheck. So I have to work in order to get paid. And so I have to put in that time. And not that I didn't have to work for my paycheck before,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's
No, I know
now,
what you
now
mean.
it's not consistent.
Yeah.
And so I have to put in that time, but also my kids are 6 and 4, and these are very, very important years, and our family is very close, and it takes a lot of triage and a lot of decision making to determine what's the most important thing for me today. And what I try to do is I try to zoom in to the day, the hour, the moment in terms of what the most pressing thing is. Like if I know that I have not been giving my work enough attention, then I know that I need to not only make the decision to say that work needs to be the top priority right now, but also to communicate that with the other people in my life. So my husband also is he's a journalist for mountain biking publications, and so he's also self-employed, and we juggle back and forth, taking care of our kiddos and working. So we have to communicate and figure out how to be respectful of one another's needs and priorities in that. So it takes a lot of proactive communication, and not just with my husband, but also with my kids, because I think um, it's very important to me to respect them. And I know that their expectation, especially as kiddos the age that they are, is that I will be there for them every single minute of the day, to cater to every single possible whim that they have. And so I have to figure out how to proactively communicate how I want to be there for them, and when I can be and when I can't be, so that they're not dealing with constant surprises. So I think that's a very important piece. And also just like inviting our kids into that, I think, is another really, really huge thing. Part of this whole, I want to end this whole dichotomy between work and life, is I feel like we often set an example for our kids that work is this like terrible thing to be avoided, and like, oh, we have to go and do it and it's awful, and I'd rather be with you, I hate work, or whatever it is. Like we're showing them like how their future is going to be. We're showing them what the world is going to look like someday for them. And so how are we framing that for them? But I think it's really important, both when it comes to like how I approach helping my kids with schoolwork and things like that, like their work that they're responsible for, but also just how I frame my own existence as a working person is very, very important to me, so that they don't see work as the enemy and something that is going to be terrible. No, it's but also there are pieces of it. There are things that you have to do that you don't
Yeah.
want to do.
We
Like
all have to
that's
do
just
stuff
what
we
it
don't
is.
like to do at the end of the day.
Yeah, that is a part of it, but that's not just like what work is. And I think this like chunk of thing that's like, what is work, like our job,
Yeah.
and separating that from life can be really can just set our kids up for the same kind of disappointment that
Yeah.
we've had.
I love that you brought that up. I was just talking with a mentor of mine about this exact thing like a week or so ago. And he was telling me a practice that he has for that very reason of like not wanting to separate work from family, or set this expectation that work is bad and everything else is good for his young children. So like coming home, and when he's had a bad day or there's a problem going on, like actually bringing his kids into the conversation, like even
Yep.
if it's something that's super complex, like breaking it down, like, oh, TJ, what would you do if you were faced with this problem? Or, what ideas do you have around this, that, or the other? And, he said just involving them in the
Yep.
conversation empowers them, gets them thinking more in depth into some complex issues, but also just they get to know what you're doing. They get to know your business, they
Right.
get to know what kind of work you're involved with. And he was like, I've actually had some brilliant ideas that they've given me through this
Yeah.
practice, like things that I never would have thought of, that my 8-year-old
Yep.
just had the correct answer and it totally was the right move. So I love that idea of not separating them, but finding ways where you can integrate your work and your family life in a way where you're not bringing your work home with you and not being present, but you're still able to involve your family and create this kind of yin yang scenario where there's not
Right.
a good and a bad. Cause I totally agree.
Right.
Like, growing up, I definitely had that viewpoint of work as taking my, parents away from the family
Right.
and being something
That's
that
what it
they
is.
had to do.
Yep.
So
That's what they see it as, is that work is just this thing that means my mom can't be with me or my dad can't be with me, rather than an extension of our lives. And it is so true that, like, even when because I do the same thing, like, that's so cool that guy was talking about that too, in terms of having these conversations and sharing what's going on, because it really is just down to like how people treat one another, just like when you're 6 or when you're 36, like how you treat each other, and like what's a fair way to deal with things and things like that. So it provides a really, really great learning environment, and doesn't make work so scary. I think it's so important for us to have those conversations, and it really equips our kids. 'Cause I want my kids to have an entrepreneurial mindset too.
yeah,
Like, I
totally.
both adventurous and entrepreneurial. I don't know if I've ever told you that we reward our kids for bravery. We like give them money for like doing things that are
Oh,
hard
no
for
way.
them, and things, yeah, like rather than rewarding them for chores
For
or anything.
chores. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes we'll do that too, like if they do something really um special and useful around the house or something like that. But for the most part, it's things that scare them, like, and
Yes.
there's not pressure. It's not like you have to go do this. It's like, hey, well, if you're willing to do that, like, that's 3 tokens right there for like jumping off that thing, or whatever it is
Yeah,
that scares that child. Because I believe that connect, like, the things that we want to teach our kids now, like, need to connect to them being equipped adults. And I believe that,
totally.
like, I assign financial reward to my kids for taking risks, because I think that there are financial rewards for taking risks when you're grown
Oh,
up too.
100%. 100%. I love that idea. Like doing a courageous act every day is a practice that I've had at different
Mm,
seasons of my life, whether it's something small, like going up and talking to a stranger, or, getting up on a stage, or starting a podcast,
hmm.
whatever it is. But doing that and having that practice as a kid and being rewarded for it,
Yeah.
it wires your brain to take risks. I was at a conference a few weeks ago where John Maxwell was speaking and had a very similar approach for his grandkids. He not doing courageous acts, but reading books. You get
Oh, uh-huh.
financial reward for reading books. And I forget what the key piece was. I think it was like pulling quotes out or something from the
Okay.
books and sharing that with grandpa John Maxwell. And if the quote or the lesson was worthy in his mind to like make the top 100 list or whatever, then there was even an additional incentive. So,
Very
all that to
cool.
say, just finding ways to reward your kids for things that are actually going to help them learn and grow and become, thriving adults versus chores,
Right.
which, yeah, the chores need to get done too, but not as much
Yeah,
of
and that
a
can be just
benefit there.
normal.
Yeah, that should
Yeah,
just
for
be an
sure.
expectation. Like, yeah, you're part of the family, you do the chores.
Right. And we do it
Yeah,
together, and we try to
yeah,
have fun with it, and we try not to make it a scary thing. But yeah, it's been really interesting to watch, especially my 6-year-old son, like, work through decisions about whether a risk is worth it to him. And
yeah.
oftentimes, a few different times, that situation comes up, and he's like, but then by the third time or something that it comes up, he's like, he finally gets the courage. But it makes it very tangible. And I think it makes it something that, again, they're not feeling that pressure from mom and dad that like, no, you need to be like, I'm gonna shove you in the pool, you need to be brave, like figure it out.
Jump
You're
off
not
that
gonna
cliff, go.
swim. Yeah, totally. Like that's what one way to parent for sure.
Yeah.
But it still provides that incentive and that encouragement to do the thing that we of course want them to do. We of course want them to be brave. I mean, not reckless, but brave. And so they have that additional incentive. It's been really neat to see their little brains like work through what's worth it to them.
I love it. I mean, just wiring your brain to be comfortable and accustomed to evaluating risk versus reward, and taking the risk when that value is there at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I've been challenged in my own life too, in that like in reading The Artist's Way, like you were talking about those little courageous things that you tried to do each day. I was doing that in terms of like trying to be more creative. Like I'm gonna wear this color that I would never wear, or I'm at the gym and we're doing high intensity interval training and we're just doing these moves, but there's music in the background. And I'm just gonna let myself groove to the music a little bit in this room of people I don't know, like just taking those little steps. It's like a muscle. Like bravery is a muscle. So I think it's important to
it is
to exercise
the more you flex it, the easier it becomes. So I think that's a great place for us to segue towards wrapping up here. Is there any other advice, ask, challenge, anything at all that you'd like people to think about as we move to close up here?
I think the biggest thing that I'm thinking about right now in terms of this showing up and this imposter syndrome stuff is that there are a lot of us that have struggled under toxic leaders at different times in different organizations. Maybe, just even government or whatever it is, everybody is impacted by toxic leaders and by, feeling like they're sort of at the mercy of somebody else's decisions. But I think that the most important way that we can combat that is for us to show up entirely, and for us to listen to the voice inside of us that says that we know what is right, and that we're honest, and that we don't just tell our toxic leaders what they want to hear just because we know what they want to hear, but that we follow our inner voice. And so that to me is a really important thing, I think, in all of this, because I think it has a greater impact on how our society goes, on just our future together as human beings. Imposter syndrome tells us like that people don't really need to hear what we want to say, but the converse to that, this idea of self-efficacy, this belief that you can do it, this belief that you can do it and you should do it, is the thing that's going to take away the keys from the people that don't have the right intentions, and the people that are steering this big ship where it's going, whether that's the ship of your organization, this country, whatever it is. So I think it's just that general final call of responsibility to show up.
Just show up. I love it. Amanda, where can people listening find and support you online? Website, socials, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so my website, which is in the process of a redesign, is reillcoaching.com. My last name is Reill. And I am very active on LinkedIn. I should be the only Amanda Reill that there is. So you can look me up there. I am active on TikTok, at Reill Coach, and Facebook, Instagram. I'm at Reill Writing. I am kind of a little bit all over the place, not in every single one of the channels, but those are the channels that I've invested in up to this point.
Yeah. Well, we'll make it easy. We'll put all the links in the show notes for everybody listening. And thank you so much. This has been a value-packed episode, a great reflection on imposter syndrome for me. And I took a bunch of notes over here for things that I want to get back into the practice of, especially an intentional writing practice. So thank you. Thank you for the nudge in the right direction and for showing up today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been really fun to talk about these things. And I'm excited to see more and more folks show up.
To all of our Adventurous listeners, thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Please be sure to subscribe, download, and share this on social media or with someone you know will get some value from it. Leaving a review goes a long way in helping people find the show, and I personally appreciate reading them when they come in. So please go drop one if you have the time. We'll see you all next week, and remember, whether we're talking about business or the things that bring us joy outside of work, life is meant for exploring. So go out there and live it one adventure at a time.